100 years ago, most Americans rented their whole lives and felt no shame about it at all. Owning a home wasn't the dream. It was a risky thing that farmers and the wealthy did. Then, in the space of a single generation, an entire nation was taught to want the exact same thing, a house of its own, until wanting it felt as natural as breathing. That wanting didn't grow in you. It was built, deliberately, within living memory, by people with something very specific to gain. Owning a home is supposed to be the proof you made it. The thing a successful American life is measured against. You've probably never once questioned that. It feels less like an opinion and more like a fact baked into the country itself. It isn't. The dream was real, but it was also a product, and the people who sold it to you are not the people you'd expect, the 1920s. In America's cities, renting isn't failure. It's just life. Working families rent. Middle-class families rent. Clerks, tradesmen, teachers, managers, they rent for their entire lives and consider themselves perfectly successful because success isn't yet measured in deeds and mortgages. And the reason is practical. The mortgage of that era is nothing like yours. There's no 30-year loan with small, steady payments. You put down a huge deposit, often half the price. You pay it back over a handful of years, and at the end you often owe a single enormous balloon payment all at once. If your income wavers, the house is gone. Owning wasn't aspirational. For most people, it was a high-wire act with no net. Nobody was dreaming about that. So sit with the shock of it. There was a time, within the memory of people still alive, when the average American did not dream of owning a home. The most powerful aspiration in the country today simply did not exist, which means something had to create it. Then the country falls off a cliff. The Depression. Banks collapse, homes are foreclosed by the millions, construction stops dead. And in the wreckage, the government makes a decision that will quietly reshape what every American wants for the next century. It decides that a nation of homeowners is a nation worth engineering, not for your happiness, for stability, for the economy, for a population with something to lose, and therefore something to protect. So the real question isn't whether the dream was sold to you. It's who designed it, and who got rich when you believed. Start with the obvious beneficiaries, the ones standing in the wings the moment the government turned toward homeownership. Builders and developers wanted customers, millions of them, buying brand new houses. Mortgage lenders wanted borrowers locked into decades of interest payments. Real estate brokers wanted a nation where buying and selling homes was a constant, lifelong activity rather than a rare event. Every one of these players profited the instant. An ordinary person decided that renting was second best, and owning was the goal. This is the layer most people can see if they think about it for a second. Of course, the people who sell homes wanted you to want one. That isn't a conspiracy, it's just commerce. But these private interests, on their own, could never have rewired what an entire country aspired to. Advertising can make you want a product. It takes something far more powerful to make a desire feel like a national value. That power came from somewhere most people never look, because the most important salesman of the American dream was the American government itself. In the wreckage of the Depression, the federal government built the machinery that would make mass homeownership not just possible, but normal. It created mortgage insurance that protected lenders, which made them willing to lend to ordinary families they'd never have risked before. It encouraged a radical new product, the long-term, low-deposit mortgage, the 30-year loan with manageable monthly payments that you think of today as simply a mortgage. That invention alone turned owning from a high-wire act into something a regular family could actually sustain. Then, after the war, came one of the largest homeownership engines in history. Picture a returning veteran in 1947, a man who 10 years earlier could never have dreamed of owning anything. Now a sweeping program of veterans' benefit lets him buy a home with almost nothing down. Multiply him by millions. And running quietly underneath all of it, a tax code that rewarded owning over renting, year after year, paycheck after paycheck. Understand what this means. The dream wasn't merely advertised by people with something to sell. It was institutionalized, written into insurance, into lending, into the tax code, into law. The government didn't just permit the dream, it financed it, subsidized it, and built the entire apparatus that made wanting a home feel less like a choice and more like the natural shape of a successful life. When the most powerful institution in the country spends decades quietly rewarding one way of living, that way of living stops feeling like a preference. it starts feeling like a fact. And it's worth being honest that this machinery never reached everyone equally. When the government decided which neighborhoods its new, affordable, government-backed mortgages would support, it effectively drew maps, and entire communities, disproportionately those where Black and minority Americans lived, were marked as too risky to back and left out. Families inside the favored areas could buy homes with government support and watch that wealth compound across generations. Families locked out could not. The same system that turned homeownership into the American dream also helped decide, from the start, who would be allowed to reach it. The dream was powerful, but it was never neutral. So step back and see the whole shape of it, because no single villain authored this. The dream succeeded because, for a crucial stretch of the 20th century, almost everyone powerful benefited from it at the same time. The government gained social and economic stability, a population of owners with something to protect, less likely to upheave the system. Banks gained decades of reliable borrowers. Developers gained an endless supply of customers. Communities gained permanence and tax bases. Existing owners watched their homes appreciate. The incentives of a dozen powerful actors all pointed in the same direction. Get Americans to want, above all things, to own. When that many institutions want you to believe something, and each one quietly rewards the belief, it doesn't feel like persuasion, it feels like truth. And that's precisely why you never noticed it happening. You didn't choose this belief after weighing the alternatives. You inherited it, fully formed, from a country that had spent decades teaching everyone in it to want the same thing. Now the honest counterweight, because the easy, cynical version of this story is wrong. The dream was not a lie. For tens of millions of families, homeownership delivered exactly what it promised: stability, a place of their own, and a genuine, durable form of wealth that lifted entire generations into the middle class and beyond. The benefit was real. The wealth was real. People were not fooled into something worthless. The reveal was never that the dream was fake. The reveal is that the dream was engineered, and that wanting it was never quite as natural as it felt. So look at the walls around you right now. Maybe you own them, and you carry the quiet pride the dream was built to produce. Maybe you rent them, and feel that faint, persistent sense that you haven't quite arrived. A feeling someone, somewhere, designed you to have. Maybe you're somewhere in between, staring at a deposit that keeps drifting out of reach, wondering what's wrong with you. Here's what to carry out of all this. The desire you feel for a home of your own is not a flaw in you, and it's not simply the timeless voice of human nature. It was authored, deliberately, within living memory, by institutions with very specific things to gain. The dream is genuinely powerful. It is also genuinely a product. The American dream did not become the measure of a successful life because it appeared naturally in the human heart. It became powerful because, for the better part of a century, a nation's most powerful institutions spent enormous effort teaching every person in it to want the very same thing. And once you can see that clearly, that the wanting was built, you finally get to do the one thing the whole system was never designed to let you do. You get to decide, for yourself, what your dream actually is.